Well, hello everyone. Thank you for coming, and thanks for having me here. I came from Brevard this morning, and I drove a fully electric vehicle all the way from Brevard. Wow. And it's plugged in and charging, and you can always ask me more about that. But why do I drive an electric car? Well, because I care about this thing. You know, we only have one of these as far as we know. We haven't found another one where we can migrate to, so we really need to think about taking care of our only home. And I've thought about this ever since I was, about the size of that little girl back there stuffing her face with a muffin. When I first started finding bugs and critters on my father and mother's farm, we had a nursery where we grew ornamental plants. That was my dad's business. And there were salamanders under rocks. There were frogs in little pools of water. There were fish and turtles in the creek. There were birds in the trees. And I was blown away by all of the diversity of life on our home planet. Of course, at the time, I was a little kid, and all I knew about was my backyard. But as you grow, you learn that it's all connected, and it's all part of the web of life. And what we do to one corner of the web, it affects the others. And so we need to learn how to respect the web of life better than we've been doing. We've not been doing very well lately. And so that's why there's places like this are so important. And organizations like Conserving Carolina are so important. And even tiny nonprofits like mine have a role to play. And I think my role is education. That's what I've always done, is I bring my love of nature and my passion for wildlife conservation and education to you guys. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. And I know you're here, some of you are here because you want to hold some snakes or see some snakes. Well, we'll get into that. But first I got to tell you a little bit about what I do. So take a look at the slideshow. I'm going to go kind of quick so that we can get into the meat of the program. But I've got to introduce what I do with my little nonprofit. It's very small. We've been operating since 2010, and there's no other staff. I am the sole proprietor, whatever you want to call me, the executive director, and main and only naturalist. I have several volunteers who help me from time to time at outreach programs, but here I am all by myself today. So let's take a look up here and learn a little bit about how all this happened. So our mission is simply nature and wildlife conservation, science literacy, and renewable energy education and advocacy. All these pictures were taken that you will see here throughout all of the years that I've been doing this. And we, of course, have outreach programs for wildlife and wild places. Hands-on nature education. Yes, that's a possum on that guy's head. Those are snails. Creek hikes, gardening, learning by doing. Yeah, how fun is that? We go out on night hikes and we search for anything that we may find, and then we learn. It's all about discovery and fun. Kind of like I'm taking that feeling that I had when I was a little kid and trying to bring that to everyone, because there's no reason for you to ever grow up and lose the curiosity that you had when you were a kid. Because often you find parents beating the curiosity out of their children and saying, grow up, you must grow up and be part of whatever. But no, that's ridiculous. Don't grow up. I mean, yeah, grow up enough to fit into society, but if you grow up too much, then you lose that curiosity and that passion you had as a kid for everything alive and wonderful, and then you become a stick in the mud, and that's no good. Okay, this wow moment, this is what I'm searching for. When I take people out in the fields, and when I take an animal out of a box, by the way, they don't live in those boxes, they have big habitats. The wow moment, look at that little girl. Oh my gosh, she found a robin's egg that the robin had hatched, and the egg was on the ground. But it was, wow, I captured that moment exactly. That was so cool. And the kid with the snake, look at that. In wildlife rescue and rehabilitation, this is another thing we do. I have some rehabilitating possums I'm working with right now. I'm helping some little baby possums, baby opossums, get old enough to be released back into the wild because their mother was hit by a car, and you'll get to meet them in a few minutes. And those turtles, We've moved turtle nests, box turtle nests, because they were put in places where they were going to be paved over. In fact, it was going to be put, like some garden pavers were going to be installed so they wouldn't have hatched. So we moved them and they hatched. It was pretty amazing. Most of the injuries, however, that we treat are caused by us in some way, shape, or form, such as this box turtle was hit by a car, and so we're having to force feed him. But he made it. He's doing fine. Now, he has to live with us forever because the person who brought him to us, they were being a great advocate, helping an animal that was injured, but they neglected to write down exactly where they found him. Box turtles are creatures of habit. They have very set habitats that they live in, and if you move them too far away, they get confused. They don't know where they are. They wander, and they suffer, and they can even die. Unlike us, we're more adaptable. If you move a human somewhere, they can adapt usually, but not a box turtle. Most reptiles, in fact, we're finding don't do well with being relocated. So he has to live with us. And opossums, of course. This is one of my main volunteers, Jim Hardy. And black rat snakes, we often will rescue snakes that were either hit by lawnmowers, or this snake ate some mice that had been poisoned by a person who poisoned the rats with mouse poison and rat bait. And then it poisoned the mice and rats. The snake ate the mice and rats and then got sick, and he did not make it. So just don't use rat bait. That's it. I mean, don't use rat bait. If you poison one thing and then something eats it, it's going to go on up the food chain, eventually getting back to you. By the way, I should go back. This is Tripod. You're going to meet her. I brought her with me today. She started my entire program. I was driving to work one day, and there was this turtle on the side of the road. This was in 2008. And I saw this turtle on the side of the road, and I thought, oh, another turtle got hit. That's terrible. And I decided to go get it off of it was too close to the road, and I didn't want it to bring in scavengers at night and they would get hit by cars. So I went to pick her up, and she looked at me. And I'm like, you're not dead. And there's a puddle of blood. I thought for sure she was going to be dead. But it had crushed both of her left feet, and her back left foot was so badly destroyed, the veterinarian had to remove it. So her name is Tripod. And she's couldn't be taken back to her habitat because her habitat was in the process of being destroyed by bulldozers. So there was nowhere to relocate her to. So she's lived with us for 10 years now. And you will get to meet her today. Conservation. We've worked with chytrid fungus sampling with amphibians. If you don't know, that is a fungus that is attacking and killing amphibians all across the world. And it is due to, in part, the trade in bullfrogs for people who want to eat frog legs. And so when you have to grow a lot of frogs in one place, it can invite fungal organisms to come in, and then birds will land in those big pools where the frogs are being raised, and then the birds can get chytrid fungus on their feathers, fly to a remote location, land in a water source, take a bath, and then the chytrid fungus drifts off and can affect animals in that area. And that's one of the vector mechanisms that they think can be causing the spread of this, is birds. So basically, don't eat frog legs. You can help stop things like this by not only supporting organizations that do research into these type of things, but also don't eat frog legs. It's that simple. And you'll stop the demand. And it's, you probably heard the saying, vote with your money, right? If you vote with your money by buying things that are good for the earth and good for life instead of the opposite, then things will get better. But if you buy things that aren't good for the earth and aren't good for life, things will only get worse. So vote with your money. Don't buy things that have negative impacts, such as frog legs. There's plenty of other things to eat. We've also worked, this is DNA sampling, where we're clipping a tiny bit of the claws off of a box turtle. It doesn't hurt it at all. It's like trimming your fingernails. Put it in a tube, send it to a guy who was doing a big DNA study on on all the box turtle species. And I have still not heard the results on that. That was about 7 years ago. It was a guy in Texas. We sampled about 75 turtles in about 2 years. Hellbender, we've worked with hellbender sampling. You guys know what a hellbender is? Oh, excellent. Giant salamanders, they can get about this big. They live in the cold mountain streams here in the mountains, more to the west, and they are an endangered species in most of their range because of the way we treat the planet. This is, I'm doing some data collection on box turtles. I radio tracked box turtles, several different individuals, for almost 10 years. And I have my tracking equipment over there. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. With the Turtle Tracks project, this was one of my biggest wildlife conservation projects. I wanted to learn more about where box turtles go, where they spend their time. You know, what do they do? They just seem to be sitting when you see them, and they're just sitting there. But no, they're not. They're very active creatures. They range over large areas, larger than you would think. And they're creatures of habit, like I said before. They go to the same places at the same times every year. If you find a box turtle in your blackberry bush in June, you're probably going to find that same box turtle in that same blackberry bush sometime around the same time next June. You might not see him, but he's probably there. And I learned a lot about wild creatures, especially wild reptiles, with the Turtle Tracks project. And I would take large groups of people out into the forest searching for the box turtles. We would use, you see the antenna here? That's that same antenna. We would use a, well, here it is. We would use a directional radio antenna, such as this. It has a radio on it. Now, it's not going to pick up the signal of a transmitted animal because, well, unless there's one around here on the exact frequency. But basically, we would go out into the woods and we would track an animal that we had attached a transmitter to. These transmitters were about the size of a quarter, and they had a tiny antenna. I may have one in there. I should have gotten one out. The little tiny antenna sticks up off the back of the turtle. He looks like a little remote control turtle. But the transmitter is so light in weight, it doesn't really affect him. And he goes on about his life. And so you can find him anytime you want to with this antenna. And then once you find him, you might think, oh, you can pick him up and play with him. Well, no. In a scientific research project, you don't want to disturb the animal any more than necessary. So if the turtle was over there, the group and I would stand about this far away. We would look, we would see what he was doing. We would take his temperature using, well, not his temperature. We would take the ground temperature near him with a probe like that, air temperature, and then we would get some GPS coordinates with the GPS, and we would log everything in a notebook. It's actually a notebook for a black rat snake I'm still tracking. And then that data could be used to learn more about the animals. And I am working one day to compile a, possibly just, you know, a spreadsheet of all of the data points. I'm not one for writing papers or anything like that, but I will give the information freely to the biologists who need it for box turtle research. And of course I am going to write a children's book one day about all of this because kids need to know these things. You know, I'm going to use real data to write a children's book so that it's real. It's based on evidence. It'll be a story, but it'll be based on evidence. And that's important. Evidence is really the only thing we have for continuing forward into the future. That's as far as I'm concerned. All right, but everybody's got their own opinions, right? So, this guy, John Rucker, amazing man. He has these amazing dogs called Boykin Spaniels. They're the South Carolina state dog, and they're absolutely the sweetest dogs ever. Incredible golden eyes. And he will go out, he would come out to my location, my study site, and he would tell his dogs to find turtles, and look at that. Yeah. He would just walk up to some thorny bushes and say, all right, girls, find turtles. And the boys were lazy. The girls did the work, and of course. And the dogs would dive into these thorny bushes and come out with turtles in their mouths. And they were very soft-mouthed dogs because they're trained to catch, or to bird hunt, right? So you don't damage the bird. And they don't damage the turtles. They would softly bring the turtle up, and the only reward they got was a bunch of loving. It was the coolest thing to watch. If you really want to see more of it, it's all on my YouTube site. I recorded every turtle hunt with these dogs. I have cards up here if you want them. And look at this. And you can see the transmitter on this turtle on his side there. This is a turtle we called Mojo because he wouldn't leave the girls alone. Here's a turtle that was hit by a car, and we patched its shell and attached a transmitter to see how it did after we helped it heal from its injury, and it did very well. Here's another one. And this one's Jimmy Irwin. We tracked him for 8 years. This is Catherine. We tracked her for 8 years as well. She's named after my mom because we found her on Mother's Day. So.
You have to rebattery those transmitters?
What's that?
You have to change the battery?
Yes, every 2 years you pull the transmitter off. They're held on with epoxy. Change the battery. Well, you have one ready. When you take one off, you have another one ready and you stick it on, and then you let the turtle go as quick as you can. Right where you found it. And then you can keep tracking. That's Mrs. Bones. And that's Jimmy Irwin again. I can tell them all by their markings. This is Rose. She was a very old turtle with a really bad attitude. She hated people. Can't blame her. She was kept in a 10-gallon aquarium as a pet for several years after a car hit her, and the people did not know she had a broken pelvis and a dislocated leg. They just thought, oh, she's okay, and they fed her lettuce for like 3 or 4 years. So she lost weight. She was almost dead when I got her, and I bulked her up, and the vet had to remove her leg, but he couldn't fix her pelvis because it had all healed wrong. And so she couldn't close up her shell. Because box turtles, they're called that because they can pull in and close up and protect themselves, and she couldn't. So she had to live with us until she passed away in the winter of this past winter in hibernation. So she could have been 100 years old. These animals live over 100 years routinely. This is one of the longest lived vertebrates on the North American continent. They love to eat worms, snails, berries. That one I caught in the act of eating a berry inside a thorny bush, and it's kind of grainy because I had to zoom in. This is how they hibernate. They'll dig down into the leaf litter and they will go to sleep, and they'll hibernate for about 6 months in the winter, depending on temperatures. Down here it's a little warmer, so probably not 6 months. And then they come out of hibernation. This is their predators. Their main predators would be coyotes, foxes, opossums, raccoons. When they're babies, yes, possums. That's an opossum on the bottom right. And they will eat baby turtles. When box turtles grow up, however, one of their main predators is, of course, dog-like animals like coyotes, and then, of course, your pet dog. If you have a fenced-in area or a dog on a chain, he's bored all day when you're at home or work. You're at school or work, and he will, if a turtle wanders into the yard, he's bored. He's going to chew on it. And I have found so many box turtles that were chewed by dogs, badly damaged, and that's got to hurt. So if you have a dog, maybe come up with a way to either keep the turtles out of the yard or give the dog a bunch of toys so he has something to do. I don't know. This one was burned in a leaf fire. So if you pile up leaves, if you rake leaves or blow leaves into a pile, or maybe have a big pile of sticks and twigs and then put leaves on that, turtles will often come because it's a great refuge, especially in the fall when the nights get cooler. They need a place to snuggle in at night. And if you pile this up for several days, there could be several animals in there when you light it to burn it if you burn your leaves. So my recommendation is burn them right away, or just find a corner of the property that you're not really using and put all your yard waste or whatever there and just leave it. There's no reason to burn it. Just leave it and let it decompose naturally, and while it does that, it will provide a home for animals like a box turtle, and then this kind of horrible thing won't happen. This turtle was alive. He lost most of his shell, but he was fully alive and healthy. All of that looks like where a shell should be was scar tissue. It was leathery scar tissue. So he could never be released because he didn't have a shell. Yes?
Do they have a home range, box turtles?
We're about to get to that. Yes, they do. Just like any other creature, whatever you want to call them, wildlife, they have a home range. But sometimes in their home range, they have roads to cross. And when they do, this is their main detriment to their survival right now is us, our machines, cars, tractors that, like if you when you mow your lawn, mow at the hottest part of the day. If you mow like a farm area, mow at the hottest part of the day. At the hottest part of the day, the turtles have burrowed down where it's cooler in the dirt, and your mower will go right over the top. And then raise the blades higher than 5 or 6 inches. That will keep the blades from hitting them less likely. Because when they feel the vibrations of the tractor coming, the mower coming, they'll hunker down and they'll pull their head and tail and legs in, and they'll get as low as they can, and hopefully they won't get hit or ran over if they're crossing a road. But what can we do to help these guys? Well, first we teach with experiential education. That's what I do. Knowledge conquers fear and opens minds and hearts. And then family educational adventure. I will take you into the forest and into the fields on trips, either tracking animals if I have any that I'm working with at the time, or any number of trips. I lead cave trips, and we can talk more about that later. Check it out. This was a hiking trip where we went out to find the turtles, and we had to bring Jimmy Irwin back to change his transmitter. Something happened with my font, but why did the turtle cross the road? Sorry about the weird font. Does anybody know why the turtle crosses the road? Obviously the same reason the chicken does. But I think there's a little more going on in the turtle's head after studying them for so long and having my own chickens. I think there's more going on in the turtle's head. So when you find a turtle crossing the road, of course, what do you do?
Save it.
Save it. How? What do you do?
Like if there's a grown-up and it sees a turtle in the road, you hold your hand out and that means stop, and then you can pick the turtle up and then take it to over here.
Which side of the road would you take it to if you find a turtle crossing the road? If he's going left, would you take him to the left or would you take him to the right?
Left.
Yes, you would take him to the side he's headed towards because he knows where he's going. My studies and many other studies tracking box turtles show that they know exactly where they are. And if you put them on the side of the road they just came from, they're going to go right back across the road. So help them out, and you're right, help them out. Yes?
I have been told that I shouldn't do that because turtles have salmonella. Debunk that for me.
Well, you're probably more likely to get salmonella letting your dog lick your face or eating at McDonald's. I mean, really, it's a wild turtle. It's a wild turtle. They could carry salmonella, but they're less likely to than things we encounter every day. Where the salmonella comes from is if you take the turtle home, put him in a 10-gallon aquarium or whatever, and give him lettuce and and then when he uses the bathroom, you don't clean the cage. And then it builds up, and then it's the concentration that really gets you. In the wild, we're exposed to it all the time. It's just in very low concentrations. So if you pick that turtle up and you carry him across the road, if you really want to feel more secure about it, just carry a bottle of hand sanitizer with you and then get a little bit and go about your day. You could get it, but your chances are so slim, really. Cutting chicken in your kitchen is more dangerous than picking a turtle up and moving it across the road. We've worked with a lot of kids and a lot of families, and never ever have we had a single case of salmonella when kids touch turtles. And we just tell them to wash their hands. This was even before the days of everybody using hand sanitizer. So we had a community near our primary study site. Actually, it was in our study site. And they started noticing turtles nesting in the gravel along the edges of their roads. And so they put up these really awesome signs. But why would why would female box turtles nest in the gravel? Does anybody know? Yes. The heat, exactly. Good job. So the sun heats up the rocks, and it makes the road a warmer place than the forest. And the mama turtle, when she's crossing the road, she feels it with her feet, and she's like, hey, this is a good place to lay my eggs. So she has to dig through the gravel, which is tough. They can do it, but it's really tough. But also, box turtle females like to lay their eggs in places where there's not a lot of roots. Well, here you go, sand and gravel. And so often you're going to find them nesting along the edges and sometimes even in the middle of gravel roads, which isn't healthy for baby turtles at all. Can you find the turtle in that picture? Yeah. There it is. Very well camouflaged. Very well camouflaged. No, you didn't see him? He's pointing right at him. He's right there. Yeah, they're very camouflaged. Unless they move, you usually can't see them. These folks, I was tracking a turtle on their land, and so they put up road signs. Famous turtle crossing. Because Bones, Mr. Bones, would often cross the road, and so they had to put signs up. I thought that was the neatest thing. So please help our little friends across the road, just like you suggested. We have a lot of other projects and programs. We're Earthshine Nature Programs, not just program. This was our snake tracks project. This is actually a veterinarian implanting a transmitter to a rattlesnake. See, with snakes, you can't glue the transmitter on like you can with a turtle shell. So you have to knock the snake out, just like you would if you guys had to have a surgery. They use the same gas and everything. And then make a small incision, kind of about here, if it was on a human. But since snakes don't have hips, there's sort of just this area back there where there's some fat and there's not much going on, really, inside. And so you put this tiny transmitter, about that big, smaller than a AAA battery, with a tiny hair-like antenna. And it can stay inside the snake for 2 years. And then at the end of 2 years, you do a surgery to take it out and you let the snake go. Or you could put another one in if you wanted to keep tracking. But why in the world would I want to track a rattlesnake? Well, rattlesnakes are one of my favorite animals, and I find them to be so misunderstood by so many people, and they get killed all the time. But you know what's far more dangerous than a rattlesnake? Mosquitoes. Yes, humans. Okay, enough said, right? Just watch the news. Wait, don't watch the news. Okay, so these are just some pictures from my rattlesnake study. Isn't that beautiful with the shining dewdrops? By the way, this is a timber rattlesnake, which is our only rattlesnake. And I tracked rattlesnakes for 4 years. And I never once had one time I had a rattlesnake rattle. And that was when she was on the move and she knew that I could see her. But all the other times they were coiled up in a resting coil, very quiet, very still. And I could get this close and they didn't even care. They were terrified. They were thinking, oh my gosh, it's a monster. It's something that's going to try to eat me. And so they would flatten against the ground. They would get really quiet and they would just hope I would go away. I would often sit 3 or 4 feet away from a coiled timber rattlesnake like this, collecting the data, while the thermometer collected its data and so on. And they never once acted threatening. So they're not the big scary animals of legend and myth. They're actually quite secretive, and they would rather be just left alone. Conservation is paramount, or they will go extinct. Just some neat pictures. Utsanati. Utsanati means he has a bell, and that's the Cherokee word for the rattlesnake. That was once when I found him crawling. Now, he didn't rattle. He was a very quiet rattlesnake. I used cameras. I used trail cameras, game cameras to watch them around their den sites. This is what I call the den cam. And I actually was able to get a picture of Utsanati coming out of his den on the 21st of April in 2014. That's the only time I was able to get that shot. So that was really a high point of that study. And it confirmed that that was his entrance and exit hole for his den. Just like the box turtles, rattlesnakes, and all other reptiles up here in the mountains hibernate throughout the winter. And I was able to generate home range maps for the box turtles and the rattlesnakes. This is a home range map for both of the male and the female rattlesnake that I tracked. And you can see each point, all those green dots are points where I located the snakes. There are a lot more points, but they're kind of in clusters. Like some of these single points are actually maybe 5 or 6 because a snake will stay in that one spot for several days, sometimes even to weeks. But you can see clusterings up on the top. There's a reason why there's these clusterings up here of data points. And it's because there's a power line access way that cuts through a forest. And that power line access way lets a lot of sun come in. And so I would often find the rattlesnakes there in the spring and in the fall. And the reason they were there is because that was close to their dens, their primary dens. You can see those 2 H's. That's their 2 primary den sites where they would hibernate. And so my hypothesis was that they went there because it was warmer, and they were getting as much energy as they could before going into hibernation and right after coming out, before they would start their summer. Yes?
Could that be true for copperheads as well?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, if you're cold-blooded, you're going to need to thermoregulate to warm up before your active time. And so if you can find their den site, there's probably a clear area nearby where they can get a lot of sun as soon as they come out and right before they go in.
What's the range?
Oh yeah, this is a rough map, but basically this is the blue area for the male. That's about 3/4 of a mile, half a mile, and then the yellow area for the female is about 3/4 of a mile in length. And these 2 rattlesnakes traveled very long linear routes. And on the bottom left of the males, you can see those two little red clusterings. Those were kind of high points with some rocky areas that got some sun through the trees. And then the female, she had these clusterings for where she spent her summer. And those were areas where sun could come through the trees, and there were lots of thick vegetation where there could be a lot of rodents. So you can imagine tracking a rattlesnake in thick vegetation where you can't see your feet. It's a little tricky, so I had to wear special snake protection, but never once did I have a snake try to bite me when I was doing this work. Then the rat snake tracks. I've been tracking black rat snakes for the last 4 years. I'm ending my final study with black rat snakes, and that's the one I'm still tracking, Apollo. He is about 6 feet long. And of course, rat snakes are very excellent predators on mice and rats. That's why they're called a rat snake. These guys can eat dozens of mice a week in the summer months and keep them away from you. Mice and rats and squirrels and birds and bats. That's what they eat. And they climb high up in big trees. They love trees. They'll spend a lot of their time in big white oaks especially. Yes?
Do they kill copperheads?
No, they don't kill them, but they may outcompete their food source. And so it's not that they hunt them and kill them, it's just that they may eat some of the food that the copperheads will eat, and so there won't be as many copperheads. They may have to go off looking for more food. So they're not a snake predator, they're a rodent predator. Yes?
I heard they den with copperheads and other snakes though.
They'll pretty much den with anything that won't eat them. I've not actually found the ones that I've been tracking denning with any other snakes. I've put cameras watching their den entrances and never seen any other snakes go in and out. I was trying to answer that question as well. But that doesn't mean they won't in other areas. But they don't they don't eat copperheads usually. I mean, they might, I guess, eat one if they had no other choice, but I've never heard any evidence to that. Yes?
We have a king snake on our property eating copperhead.
Now, king snakes will, and I brought a king snake. That's the one a lot of people confuse. They see this guy and think it's a king snake and often will call the black rat snake a king snake. But the king snake is black with yellowish white bands around its body, and you're going to actually get to see one. I won't let you touch him because he bites, but you'll get to see him. And they do eat copperheads and rattlesnakes. King snakes do, not rat snakes. But if you have large white oaks on your property, especially large old white oaks with hollows up near the top of the tree and then horizontal limbs that come out almost perfectly horizontal from the trunk, there's probably a resident black rat snake who goes up and hangs out in that tree a lot. I found these big guys in large trees a lot, and it was almost always white oaks with a horizontal limb associated with holes in the trunk of the tree. I would actually use drones to fly up above the tree and look down to see what the snakes were doing. And it worked pretty well, but it's really hard to fly a drone in a forest. Crashed it a few times. Okay, we have a lot of volunteers who help us go to events to teach people about our native wildlife. And this is some of my crew. Student internships. If you are 18 or older, you can intern with us. This guy's helping us do surgery on one of our first black rat snakes. Then we're also into renewable energy and electric vehicle awareness. Yeah, no, this is a Photoshop picture, but I was messing around with it. So I think one of the greatest ways we can lessen our carbon footprint, our impact on the planet, is not drive things powered by fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are creating this thing we call climate change. Some people don't believe it, but most of the world scientists agree that it's causing the Earth to warm up, and we're the cause because we're burning fossil fuels. We're putting too much carbon into the atmosphere, and the Earth can't take it back out fast enough. It's never happened this fast in this short amount of time in history. So, if you can drive a car that's powered by the sun or water or wind, you're not going to be doing that, right? My car out there is powered by, right now, whatever powers this building. I don't know, the dam at Lake Lure maybe? Maybe where a little bit of hydropower is charging my car right now. But normally my car is charged on sunshine. I have a solar array on my classroom, and that's where my car gets most of its juice. And we have a club where we promote electric vehicles, and all of us drive electric cars. Car shows where we let people come and see what they're all about and take them for rides. And then you wouldn't believe how many electric vehicles we have helped people get into just by sitting in them and taking them for a spin around the parking lot. Because they're a better way to drive, trust me. If you don't believe me, just take one for a test drive. It will blow your mind. And we do school outreach with our cars and our animals. I will drive my electric car full of animals like I did today to high schools and middle schools. This is Asheville School. And then we'll teach about electric vehicles and reptiles and amphibians and misunderstood animals. So it's misunderstood animals, misunderstood vehicles, and misunderstood energy systems. Wow. Because, you know, a lot of people are like, I don't want to put solar on my roof because it's too expensive. Have you done your research? No. I always encounter this. I don't want to get an electric car because it's too expensive or it'll run out of a charge. Have you done your research? No. Do your research before you make a decision. That's the key here. Think critically. Don't just listen to what other people say and work on hearsay. You got to answer your own questions. We live in a world today where you can answer any question you have at the push of a button, or the tap of a screen, I should say. No more buttons in today's world, right? You just have to know how to think your way through all of the answers that you're going to come up with on this thing we call the internet. There's a lot of real answers, and then there's a lot of not real answers. We do EV driver Q&As and panel discussions. This was with Asheville School as well. We give free rides. And we help you build local EVSE, electric vehicle supply equipment infrastructure. So we help. If you want to put in a charging station right here on this building, we'll help you do it. We'll help you connect with people that will help you do it. And we help real people, like my friends here, get into electric cars, and they love their car. They bought it 2 years ago, and they didn't look back. Now they don't have a gas bill. And no, their power cost didn't go up very much, about $25 a month. And we'll help you create the positive change that we all wish to see in the world. And then, of course, we built this. We decided a couple of years ago that we were using all this energy and it was coming from coal. And we were like, we got to do something better. And there is a better way. It's off-the-shelf solar technology. So we installed a solar array that powers my car and all the animal habitats for the animals you're about to meet. And with lots of hard work and determination and volunteers and interns, we built it. It powers the classroom. That's my classroom and my nonprofit office. That's from the air. Neat place. This is where we're located, up on the east side of DuPont Forest. Anybody's welcome to come. We just have to make arrangements and put it on the calendar. We converted an old dirty gas tiller to a solar-powered electric tiller, planted in an organic garden, and harvested the rewards with the students. Yep, that tiller used to run on gas. Now you just plug it into the solar array and it runs on sunshine. We do a lot of STEM and nature education, of course. That's what it's all about. These girls are cleaning our first solar array project that we built in class. But why do we do all this? Well, because there is no planet B. Thank you to all of our supporters over all the years who've helped make this happen. And please consider making a donation. Anyway, so that's the end of my slideshow. But I have animals I want you to meet, and I know that's really why everybody came. I'm going to turn off my computer because it's not needed anymore, and I don't want its battery to run down. And then I'm going to get into that.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
You said don't use rat bait or poison.
Yeah.
Propose getting rid of rats or mice that might be in places where you don't want them.
First, you have to figure out what's drawing them there. If they're being drawn there by something like a food item that you're leaving around, often it's linked back to us. If you have bears getting in your trash can or possums getting in your trash can, it's probably because you're leaving trash in your trash can. If you have rodents in your place, you may have a problem with rodents or with food that sorry, I'm trying to do 1,000 things at once. It could be something like that, or they might just like the habitat. Invite big black snakes in. If you have rodents, you're probably eventually going to have big black snakes. Or use snap traps. That's what I use in my classroom, and I have a lot of mice because I'm in the forest, and so field mice and deer mice come in the wintertime, and I have to put out kill traps because I hate glue traps. Those things are despicable. They trap everything. And then you have to get the sad snake off of the glue trap it's just horrible. So use traps that kill the mouse instantly. That's the more humane way to do it. And then just go bury it in the leaves. Be careful though, if you have little dogs and you use snap traps that are baited with peanut butter, it doesn't work real well for the dog. Yeah. So hide them in places where the dog's nose can't get. Yes.
Does the turtle shell regenerate?
The bone itself, I don't believe the bone, like if it's broken off, that piece won't ever grow back. But if two bones are broken in half and they're still alive, they'll knit back together, but it will take a lot of time. So I have to use epoxy, a very strong plumber's epoxy, to hold the two together. It's kind of like a cast on your leg, and that allows it to knit. And I've had really good luck with that. I'll clean the surface really well and sterilize it really well, and then I'll put some triple antibiotic ointment in between the two broken pieces of shell, and then I will, if it's a small enough crack, I'll put some epoxy over it. We can talk more about it later about exactly what epoxies I use. But yeah, if a piece of the shell is missing, it won't grow back. And then I have to actually make a shell over the hole. I've got a couple of turtles with one had a hole that big in its shell, and you could see into the body cavity and see things moving around, you know, organs. And I didn't think he was going to make it. But I made a piece of shell for him. I used a piece of fiberglass netting underneath and then put the glue over top of that. And he's been alive for 4 years, still doing well.
Are shells calcium?
It's bone, just like your bones. Yeah, calcium, and it's a lattice of calcium. It's alive, it's growing, it's part of the animal. A turtle can't crawl out of his shell. He is part of it and it's part of him. Yes?
So if it's like a shell is broken, can you use glue to glue it back together?
It depends on the kind of glue, and you have to, yeah, it can't be most normal glues. You really have to know what you're doing. I would recommend, if you really are interested, take a course in wildlife rehabilitation. And there are many different courses offered. When I was your age, I started getting interested in that. And when I was about 13, I went and took a course with somebody and learned how to do it. And techniques get better as time goes on, as science gets better. And we come up with new techniques to help those little animals out that get hurt. So it can be done, but I wouldn't use Elmer's glue or anything like that.
Gorilla glue.
Or, yeah.
Gorilla glue.
Right. Probably wouldn't use it. Yeah, I would use it on epoxy because it won't leak down. You don't want anything leaking down into the body of the animal. You want something that will form a nice patch but not leak into the animal and hurt it that way. Yes?
If you find a turtle that has a shell that is broken, what do you do with it?
The best thing to do, great question, is to find a local veterinarian and say, I found a turtle, you know, it was hit by a car, and take it to the vet. Most vets will take it in at least for a few minutes or for a short time until they can connect you with a rehabber, a wildlife rehabilitation officer, and or they'll just give you a phone number, and then you'll call that phone number, and then you can meet somebody like me and drop the turtle off. But always remember and write down exactly where you found it. Write that down, and then the rehabber, like me, can take that turtle back to his habitat. He needs to go home to his habitat. And after he's rehabbed, after he's healed and he's better, you can take him back. Now, of course, you wouldn't want to take him back and put him right in the middle of the road. You know, that's not going to help. You want to put him back in the habitat off to the side of the road where you found him. And hopefully, when you found him, if you found the injured turtle, write down exactly where you found him and the direction he was traveling. Draw a picture if you want to. That would help really well. And then, when I go back or whoever goes back to release him, you can go, okay, he was heading east, go east and put him on the east side of the road. They know exactly where they are, and they'll just pick up where they left off. Yes?
How do you judge the age of a turtle if it's smaller?
The smaller, I'm speaking about box turtles. Okay, so smaller box turtles, when they're born, and all the way up till about 20 years or so old, they add growth rings on each scoot. The scoots are the plates on the back of their shell. And you can count those rings pretty reliably up to about 20 years old and know their age within a few years. Now, after 20, those rings kind of run together and you can't reliably count them. Then you have to look at things like, is the turtle perfect, or does he have a lot of damage? You know, I guess theoretically the older you get, the more damage you have to you, know, scars and things like that. But turtles are a little different than humans. As we age, we tend to get more wrinkly. As turtles age, they tend to get more polished. their shells get more smooth and they start losing, especially on their bellies, they start losing those growth rings. And they just have, if a turtle has a really smooth belly with no growth rings, then he's probably an older turtle because he's been crawling around a lot more, rubbing his growth rings off, basically.
So you just count the growth rings on the top?
Yeah, just pick one scoop. I'll show you, hang on. I got a turtle. We'll start with a turtle. How about that? This is Tripod. She's the one that started it all. And you can see she's missing a little foot. And she's an older turtle. It's hard to see her growth rings. She might be in her 40s or 50s even. And you pick one of these plates. I usually pick the biggest plate, and then you can count the rings from the middle out to the edge. And she's a female box turtle. You can tell the girls from the boys typically by their eyes, for one thing. The girls typically have brown, sometimes orangish eyes. And the boys, their eyes are bright red like your cap. Another way to tell is the girls typically have a flat plastron, the bottom of the shell. And the boys have a curve right here in the bottom of their plastron. And that allows them, when mating, to be able to fit more on the back of the female so they don't topple off. Boys tend to have a larger head. If I had a boy in one hand and her in the other, you could see his head would be wider. Kind of more of a more bulky jaw. It's just the... Oh, this funny little thing on the bottom here, this was an experiment. Okay, so when she came back from the vet, she had stitches in her nub, her little stump, and she would crawl around trying to be a turtle, and the poor little nub was getting abraded, and the stitches were getting a little infected. And I thought, I need to figure out a way to raise that up. So I glued a chair skid on her belly. I found a little chair skid at Lowe's, and I glued it on there with epoxy, the same epoxy I would use to patch a cracked shell, and it raised her shell up enough to where that skid took most of the abuse, and the stitches healed, and now she has a healthy little nub. And now the skid's wearing off naturally. And it will take it time. This has been on there 10 years. Yeah. And so, you know, turtles do everything slow. Whoa, the acoustics are amazing.
Yeah.
When you have her or your animals, your box turtles, because she has to stay with you,
Right.
what do you feed her? Not lettuce?
Oh, definitely not lettuce. Imagine eating lettuce all your life. Yeah, that would be torture. So they're omnivores, so they eat everything. And you know, plants and meat. And so bugs, worms, slugs, snails, and occasional cans of cat food. But I use really good stuff, Taste of the Wild. I don't want to give them any grains because grains just make you get fat and unhealthy. Isn't she pretty? You can touch her.
You have mealworms and that kind of stuff?
Mealworms, yep, mealworms, grubs. Also, I have an agreement with a local nonprofit, organic grocery store. I'm going to get some hand sanitizer, by the way, just for good measure. Let me go grab it. I'm going to pass it around. But I have an agreement with a local grocery store, and if anybody wants to touch her, just get a squirt of this, just for good measure. You just never know. You know, there could be salmonella, but I really don't believe so. As many years as I've been doing this. And so this grocery store donates to my organization a couple of bucketfuls of organic vegetables and fruits every week. And so these guys eat better than I do sometimes. So this week she got blackberries, blueberries, radishes, kale. Oh gosh, the list goes on.
How much does she eat?
Excuse me, what was that?
How much?
Does she eat? They'll just eat until it's gone. And of course, it's not just her. She lives in a pen about 1/3 the size of this room, a circular pen. And it has 12 different tortoises and turtles in it. And there's about 8 box turtles. And then the rest are South American redfoot tortoises and a Russian tortoise. Now, if you're eating, don't touch her. That's a little different. That's an easy way to transmit germs right into your belly. Get a little squirt. I'll come through here and come over to these guys. Yes, question?
You said they always know where they're at. You know the mechanism of their navigation?
The mechanism of their navigation?
How they always know?
You know, that's a great question. I don't know, but I know a lot of people have been studying that, and there's some connections possibly to the magnetic fields of the Earth. Similar to, you know how sea turtles will navigate back to that beach to lay their eggs that they were born on or near? Well, these guys may actually use a very similar system to the sea turtles. Yeah, I think there's still a lot of studies on that. Yes?
This is snapping turtle.
No, this is an eastern box turtle. Did you need a squirt? You didn't touch?
We don't see his back leg.
Oh, yeah. You there? Just a little nub.
I caught a lizard, and I was like scanning his big red-headed snake.
Yeah.
And I was like scanning around his back leg, and had his all his feet, all his toes and stuff.
They're missing?
Yeah.
Could have been a fungus.
Healed back.
Oh, it healed back. Really?
That was a great
Ew, wow.
Yeah, so yeah.
Wow.
Something got it covered.
Yeah, probably. Well, I'll come back here and let you guys see her.
When we were kids, we used to always have little pet turtles. Were they likely box turtles?
Did you get them at a pet store?
Yes.
Probably a red-eared slider. Yeah, they were sold in pet stores all the time, just so the pet stores could make money, and then often the kids would just let them go when they got tired of them, and then they're non-native.
We didn't know what.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's really sad. Luckily now that's illegal in most places.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because they're non-native and they destroy the native environment. They outcompete other turtles. Yeah, and other animals. See now, okay. Anybody else want to see her that didn't get to look?
Do they bite?
They can nip you if you get too close to their mouth, but they usually don't.
Okay.
I've had a few that did.
Tell a box turtle from a snapping turtle.
Oh, easy. Snapping turtles have a very long tail, like some kind of a dinosaur or something. Theirs it's a little nub, and snapping turtles have a more flattened shell, and they have webbed feet. They live in the water. Yep. So hey guys, I had a really good question up here that everybody needs to hear. So someone asked, how do you tell a box turtle from a snapping turtle? Well, it's really easy. Snapping turtles have a more flattened shell. They have webbed feet, and they have a very long tail, and they're always trying to bite you if you try to mess with them. So my recommendation is if you find a snapping turtle crossing the road, definitely you want to get it off of the road. So get a rope or a stick or a shirt or something out of your car and let them bite that, and then just drag them off the road. It usually works because you don't want them to get hit by a car. Often a 60-pound snapping turtle, imagine if you hit that in your car, you might crash. It could be bad. In fact, about 2 months ago, a woman called me up and she said, hey, I have an injured snapping turtle. It was hit by a car in front of my house. I watched it happen. She said, I watched as the turtle started to cross the road from my living room window, and I started to go outside to rescue the turtle and get it out of the road, and a car came, swerved around it, and when it swerved around it, that car hit another car. And then I think actually as it swerved, it hit it. Then it hit the second car, but no people were injured, but the turtle had a bad crack in its shell. So she brought it to me, I patched it, I used epoxy, let the epoxy solidify really well, and then we let the turtle go in the creek nearby where it was found. That video is on YouTube if you want to watch it. Yes?
You have emphasized that turtles don't relocate well.
Right.
They have a, 100-year lifespan or tens of years.
Yeah, at least, yeah, definitely.
If you relocate them away from roads, they will get confused, they will curtail their lifespan. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
They don't adapt.
They don't adapt very well. We actually had one of the turtles we were radio tracking, and we wanted to see if we could retrain it to live in a safer area. This turtle lived beside a busy road. It wanted to spend most of its time in a grassy strip, the median, right beside the edge of the road where cars were whizzing by. And it would spend most of its summer there. So I thought one summer, well, let's see what will happen. See if we can retrain this turtle to live farther up the mountain where it's safe. So I moved it about 1/4 mile. Well, as I tracked it, it made its way back down to the edge of the road. And I thought, well, let's move it a little farther. I moved it 1/2 mile, and it did the same thing. It just took it a little longer. And I finally moved it the last time it was about 3/4 of a mile. And I mean, it was a beautiful forest. I thought if I was a turtle, I would want to live here. But it made its way back to the side of the road. And I thought, well, that it wants to be there. And so I let it live there. And as far as I know, she's still out there. We stopped tracked her for 4 years. And that was Mrs. Bones. Yes?
What is, how would I, if I wanted to look up, some videos on YouTube, what would I look up?
Oh, my videos? Well, you can come up and get one of my cards when I let you guys come up and get stuff. Yeah, I'm going to let you come up and look at all this here in a few minutes. But let me jump in with the other animals. Yes?
You have a snapper in a pond or a pond, could you still go swimming there and get the water?
Oh, yeah. Don't worry about snapping turtles in ponds and lakes. They don't care about you. They don't want to eat you. You're way too big and scary. You're a monster to them, like a giant. So I've snorkeled with snapping turtles. I've swam right beside them. They never try to hurt you. They just swim along. They look at you like, whoa, you're a big fish, and they swim the other way.
They like duck legs.
They will if there's nothing else to eat. That's a good thing to bring up. Many people think the big snapping turtle is what's taking their ducks. But if you have big bass, it's probably more likely the big bass. Did you know snapping turtles actually eat more vegetable matter than plant matter? Most of the studies have shown the stomach contents of snapping turtles that were killed on roads or whatever are mostly vegetable matter. And I actually was able to witness one time a snapping turtle about as big as a dinner plate eating grapes off of a grapevine. I was like blown away. It was just leaping up and grabbing the grapes. Because I kept trying to figure out what was taking the grapes at this certain level. And there was this weird wide track going to below the grapes. And so one night I was coming home and I saw it under the grapevines with my flashlight. And this was back before I had good cameras and such. But there it was jumping up eating grapes. And I was like, wow, that's the coolest thing. So snapping turtles they will eat meat, but they prefer to eat dead meat. Sick things, like a fish that's ill and can't escape quick enough. But yes, if a duck's swimming over and if they're nearby, they might just take the duck. But if you have big bass, muskellunge, fish like that, they're going to take those ducks first.
What is an alligator turtle?
Alligator snapping turtle? Now, that's a snapping turtle that only occurs in the deep south. We don't have them up here. The only snapping turtle we have is the common snapping turtle. They can get 60 pounds or so, and they can bite really hard, but that doesn't make them a bad animal. Think about the honeybee. Do you really want to go kill all the honeybees just because they sting? No, I want to eat vegetables and fruit. So they pollinate my vegetables and my fruits. They make honey. So animals that are very misunderstood, such as snapping turtles, and snakes, we need to learn to respect them as well, even though they might have a lifestyle that we might not totally agree with. That doesn't make them bad, does it? It just makes them different. So let's go on with some more misunderstood animals. So that was tripod. And now I need some hand sanitizer. I have to follow my own rules. My rule in my class is if I touch one animal, if a student touches one animal, they have to sterilize their hands before touching another so you don't transfer germs around. Now, I told you I tracked black rat snakes. Well, I brought one. He's only 2 years old, though. So he's really tiny compared to how big he can get. This is a little baby black rat snake. Well, a subadult. He's 2 years old. And this is the one that is probably one of our #1 predators on rodents. Very effective rodent predator. They eat lots and lots of mice and rats. And in a minute, I'm going to show you how big they can get. I've got an adult that's 6 years old. This guy's 2. Come around and let you see him. We're not going to touch him. He's really small, and too many hands would freak him out. He's really nice. He gets handled by lots and lots of students. I'm going to let you guys, these guys that want to hold him, hold the big one in a minute. Isn't he neat?
Yes.
Oh yeah, he can eat a full-size mouse. Yep. He is a constrictor. So do you know what a constrictor is? What is it? What's that?
They eat it whole.
They eat it whole, but how do they kill it? If he wanted to eat a mouse, what would he do? How would he kill it before he could eat it?
He would poison it?
Nope, he's not venomous at all. I would not hold him if he was venomous.
Squeeze it really tight.
Squeeze it really tight. Exactly. He would grab it by the face, and then he would wrap around it, and then he would squeeze it really tight, and then it would die really fast, and he would gobble it up. Yeah, let's go this way. Who else wants to see him? You guys? What's that? This is a black snake. Yep, this is the same thing. Yep. Hey guys, somebody just asked, is he different than a black snake? Well, this is the same thing as a black snake. The black rat snake is also the black snake. Now there's another black snake called the black racer, which looks similar but isn't as personable. Black racers aren't the ones you want to pick up if you're going to pick up a wild black snake. Now that being said, I wouldn't recommend picking up any wild snake until you have a lot of knowledge, because you might make a mistake and pick up a black rattlesnake, and you wouldn't want to do that because rattlesnakes come in black also.
See that pattern underneath? We got lots of these.
You're lucky.
Yes, we are.
My mom
very
had a snake.
Really? Well, maybe you should get one. I like your shirt, by the way. Look at that. Yeah, that's a pretty snake. Yeah, look at that. Saying hello.
Hi, you're shiny.
Yeah, he is.
Well, you're very shiny.
He just shedded.
So do their markings change as they get older?
They do. When they're born, their body has sort of this blocky pattern, and as they get older, they get darker and darker. And he's losing his pattern, getting darker every day. Look at this.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he'll let you touch one in a little.
Yeah, the big one. I'll get him out next. Anybody want to see the black snake? Here he is.
I have a picture of a kind of big black snake eating a copperhead. Who are you?
A black snake eating a copperhead? I would love to see that. Yeah.
Right out of the fire.
Really? Okay.
And I was going out to where I had a basketball one day, and it's when these cameras just first came out.
Yeah.
And I was going into the truck, and I said, my husband, I said, look, what I see. And there was this, I have a big picture of it, and it's a black snake. No, I just
Did it look just like this?
No, it was not like this.
I bet I know. I'll show you in a minute. I bet it was a king snake.
He was curious. He's very smooth.
Isn't he smooth? Yeah, and no slime. Snakes aren't slimy. Yeah, just a little guy.
I heard you say that when you tried to relocate the turtle, it found its way back.
Yep.
But I haven't heard you say anything other than they get confused.
Right.
When you locate them where they can't get
Too far away. Yeah, this one, he wasn't far enough, or she wasn't far enough away to where she couldn't reorient. So if you were to take it 30 miles away, then it may get home, but probably not, because there's too many obstacles in the way. Yeah, if it couldn't, it wouldn't make it. There have been studies done where they would relocate a large population of box turtles from one area to another because this area, say, was going to be developed, and so they would move the turtles. There was one study done in New York where they moved, it was like 400 or so turtles to a new area that didn't have turtles, or traditionally had them, and they moved these turtles in there, and I think it was only like a 45% success rate to adapt. Yeah, which isn't terrible, but it's not the best odds. 80% would be better, something like that.
You drive by, you see a turtle on the road.
Right.
You don't want it around the road.
Right.
Before today, I would.
Yep.
And we've done a bad
taking them away from
we would see a baby turtle, and it must have been on the asphalt.
Right.
Hot, so we would
move it. Yeah, I did the same thing for years until I started studying this, and now I just move them across the road in the direction they're going. I just feel like it's the best thing we can do based on the science that shows.
Even the danger of them probably going back and forth.
Yeah, you kind of have to weigh it. Like, where do you find it? If it's an extremely busy highway, yeah, it might be better to take them a little farther away up into the forest somewhere. I've had to make that call a few times. You know, where I take it, it's just which is worse. You know, what's the lesser? Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's probably better. It is. It's better than being in a 5-lane highway with cars whizzing by. That's true. Sometimes you just have to make a judgment call. Yep. Yep. Okay, hey guys, I'm going to get out a really big snake now. Okay, so this is a gray rat snake. I kind of have to put him on my head. He's getting so heavy. This is a gray rat snake. We don't have gray rat snakes in the mountains. Where are you going? We don't have gray rat snakes in the mountains here. You have to go down to the coast in central South Carolina to find them in forests like, I don't know, like a maritime forest on the coast. You would find these guys. And they love to climb up in the big live oak trees and such in search of their food. And so they have that blocky gray on gray pattern that helps hide them on the gray bark. And his name is Slip. His sister's name is Slide. And when he was born in my nature center 6 years ago. He'll be 6 next month. And when he was born, he was the size of a pencil. So you can see how much they can grow. And he now eats a full-size rat every week. He could eat a squirrel. He could eat a rabbit easily. And he's very nice, very friendly. And he's been handled by thousands of people. Would you like to hold him? He's very heavy. Well, heavy for small people. Let's put him around your neck. That's probably easier. Here you go.
Yeah, look up. Look up here.
Now you hold him for a few minutes, and I'm going to get another one out for you guys. If anybody wants to come up and hold a snake, now's the time. I've got a couple of corn snakes here, which are common snakes that you can find around here. This is the color phase that you would usually find in this area. Whoa, where are you going? And a lot of people confuse corn snakes with copperheads, but they look totally different. They're totally different. They have a tiny head, and copperheads have a wide head. Totally different. You want to hold a little corn snake?